This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MtG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptar. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MtG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
Hey guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast. We've got a pretty information-intensive episode for you here today. It's going to be, we're covering some changes that are happening for supplies. So on like the actual retailer side, going to be reflected on us. It may get passed along to you guys. Just want you to at least be aware of it. We're also going to cover the paper changes that Wizards made as of M20 and I believe Modern Horizons, actually.
Yeah, the announcement that I have pulled up says as early as June 7th, which was last Friday.
So Modern Horizons then. And the official London Mulligan is here. We have a final decision on all formats, and we're going to get into nitty-gritty of what that could mean financially. So to start with, we'll cover the supply changes. So in one of our earlier episodes, we covered an easy way for people to save money, which was literally just opening a wholesaler account for supplies, because you can get stuff at an insane discount. We talked about supplies, stuff like that. So there was actually an email that was sent out by a couple of distributors, and I've got one pulled up here. It says, we're going to be updating our pricing on June 17th, 2019. Affected items from BCW can be found by clicking here. All Ultra Pro items will be affected by a 5% tariff surcharge.
Okay.
So this is verbatim what Ultra Pro sent out to people. At Ultra Pro, we strive to manage costs wherever possible and to minimize price increases. As you're aware, there have been several special tariffs imposed on goods and materials imported from China. Since September 2018, they've had an immediate and significant impact on our costs. Thus far, we've absorbed them in the interest of price consistency. However, to maintain the quality that our customers have come to rely on us for, we will implement a 5% trade tariff surcharge on all accessories shipped from any U.S. warehouse effective June 17th, 2019. So basically your Ultra Pro sleeves, your top loaders, penny bags, anything like that, all of a sudden there's a 5% surcharge on for retailers. Now, this may not seem like a lot, and generally it's really not going to be.
No.
The effect, though, is going to be a little bit of a compounding thing. So whereas it used to be, all right, well, we have to spend $65 on a case of 5 rows. Well, now we have a 5% increase on that. And whereas we may have been able to absorb that cost before, you may not necessarily see that being the case going forward. That affects their binders. Eclipses, actually, which is probably the most relevant product to be affected, which the markup on those was already, I think, about wholesale they're a little over $5. So something to be mindful of, because most retailers can probably afford to eat the 5% on that, since they're charging $9 to $10 a pack. But you may see some people start to put their prices up.
Yep. And
this may be something that we start to see ripple out from here on out. It may start to affect board games. I mean, Ultra Pro is probably the biggest entity in the industry that's not Wizards of the Coast or like an actual game manufacturer. So seeing them hit by this, because they do baseball cards, they do trading cards, they do everything. It's pretty indicative that you may see something like that hit other areas of gaming and, Magic at large. So it's something that, like, I saw the email and I was like, hey, I want to make sure we cover this, because we want to get that information out to you guys, because it's, not to bring politics or anything in, but it is a relevant financial piece of information to people that may be looking into running stores or stuff like that.
Yeah, and 5% isn't a lot now, but that could accrue. And sometimes for some people, you don't shop for items like this all that often, because you might buy in bulk or you might just buy infrequently, and a price hike is not just indicative of, if you're buying from your LGS, just a hike there. This does ripple all the way down through to distro.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Just wanted to get that out there. Yep. And then let's get started.
You said that's just Ultra Pro. That's not BCW and their boxes, right?
So yeah, BCW, and we tweeted out the link from our Twitter earlier. The stuff from BCW is like folios and their snap cases.
Okay.
which unfortunately they had the magnetic cases, which were really cool.
Yeah.
Those are now hit by that increase. So.
Okay. I just wanted to check because I buy all my boxes from BCW.
Yeah.
Either direct or through Amazon.
Those are unaffected.
Okay.
Comics, if you get their comic binders, those are affected as well.
Interesting. Yep. But so our next topic to go over is the paper changes that Wizards is making. So I'm gonna bring this up, and it's a very brief article, easy to find, and basically what WotC said is just mea culpa. They have been seemingly lowering the grade of the paper they've been using over the years in the English product, resulting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right. Resulting in things like Nexus of Fate, the curl on that. There is, as far as I know, no tournament legal KES from the EDH product. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, you can look at certain foils that came from various promotions. Figure of Destiny had a foil that was extremely warped, and it was almost strictly unplayable. And that was it Eventide?
Yeah, Eventide.
Yeah. So you're talking like the early 2000s that this has been going on. So they've been testing a new paperweight, or I think it's called the gram. They're changing the gram of the paper, and they've been testing it in Japan and various other markets, and now they're finally going to roll it out into the U.S. And they said you'll see it starting June 7th in War of the Spark, but that should mean that if it's not in Modern Horizons now with some of the supplemental cards, that they don't need a collate like the art cards, then we could see it in the second run of Modern Horizons, and we should definitely see it in Core 2020.
Yeah.
And I actually haven't had the opportunity to handle many Japanese cards from the the Master sets that they've put this in, but I do know that people were talking about how in Modern Masters 2 moving forward, the cards were a little more waxy, they were a little more glossy, they just didn't have the same kind of feel that they did previously. Yeah. And that's what you're going to see from these cards. So they're going to feel less like the Magic cards you're used to and familiar with, and more like some of the bad proxies and fakes that you've seen, despite the fact that they should pass the same light and core tests. You're just looking at a product that is updated and new, quote unquote. And this, we talked about this prior to the cast while we were doing our line tests. This is basically a mea culpa by WotC to the players so that they can play their cards, and kind of a backdoor gimme to judges. I have been lucky enough to not have to judge a large event where I needed to proxy Nexus of Fates for players, nor a legacy event where I needed to proxy KES, but I do know neither of that was fun. Watching Nexus players cast Basic Mountain at the Pro Tour, not a fun event. Watching judges have to shuffle Nexus players' decks at that Mythic, Cleveland, that MC, in the top 8, also not fun as a spectator. And so I like this. It's to me a good change, and it goes with the evolution of the product. There was a good write-up about this a couple months ago by a paper salesman that also plays Magic, who talked about why you will never be able to recreate the stock that old Magic cards were printed on, and thus you'll never be able to accurately fake old cards because of it. And updating the weight and actually spending the money, because this was a cost-cutting technique by them, is something that's been long overdue, especially if they want to keep printing buy-a-box promos in foil. Which, as you pointed out in the line test, Flusterstorm is not foil, so that might be the move going forward. Yeah. We don't know.
Because at this point, we've got Nexus is whatever, it's going to rotate soon, so you don't have to worry about that.
But 3 months.
KES is obviously a tournament playable card. So we have a non-foil version suddenly printed in Modern Horizons, so you don't have to proxy it anymore, kids.
Yeah. And like I said, this is less a finance driver than it is just a move to kind of help the player base and give them cards that they can play with, as opposed to cards that look nice but then turn into the letter C.
Basically, they're not always fake if you feel them like this, is what we're saying.
Yeah. There might be some ramification. I don't think there's any good number on how many foils that have come out of recent packs that are completely unplayable, but I'd venture a guess and say that it's less than 1% of all foils. It might be worse if you live in a more humid climate. They might actually tend to warp a lot faster, a lot easier. But this is nothing super finance related, just one of those things to be looked at and taken advantage of where possible.
Yeah.
But the big news for us this week was the acceptance of the London Mulligan, and I for one enjoy this. I mean, look, there are problems with Legacy and Vintage already, and the card's name.
Don't break it more.
It's the Mulligan didn't break it. They printed Narset and Karn.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
If you look at the Star City Envy
Narset
from
has
last
way
weekend,
more to do with it than anything else.
If you weren't playing Narset apparently in that event, you were playing Karn, and that was the top 16. And Legacy is very much in the same boat right now. They reprinted Leovold in a card that doesn't get hit by Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, Swords to Plowshare, an Edict effect. You can't kill this thing.
Yeah.
It's not the London Mulligan that's going to break those formats or save those formats. More importantly, this is a modern thing. And with Modern Horizons coming out and Canister crushing the format with the Hogak deck, or Bridgevine, or Hovine, whatever you want to call it. The
Hovine, nice.
London Mulligan has a little more to do with that and finance drivers on the modern format than anything else moving forward. It is an extremely powerful mulligan for older formats. It allows fair decks to play a little more unfairly because they get to find the cards they need in games 2 or 3, or if they know what they're playing against, because they also changed the deck list rule at the same time. I know, multiple variables, right?
Bad data science.
You can now kind of sculpt your hand for games 1, 2, and 3. And this is going to probably in the short run push combo and weird and dumb cards in Modern. We had somebody in our Discord saying they jumped into a Modern league and got turned 1, 3, or 4 times in that league by something dumb, be it Allosaurus Rider or Hogak, because this was over the weekend. And you're going to see a lot of really quick price changes. Hogak went because that deck just, again, it was another canister creation like Neoform, so it just took off because that guy has a track record now. Yeah. And then people are believing that you can, with the Teferi's Puzzle Box and Narset, lock out the game a lot faster, a lot easier with a London Mulligan than without, which gives Control this kind of backdoor lock and win. Yep. So, Puzzle Box, all gone. Narset still kicking. I think she's a $3 Planeswalker right now.
Yeah, I would not expect that to stick for long, because if we're about to get M20 and we have MH, there's only so much more sealed product that's going to be coming out.
Oh yeah, for Horizons, or not? Spark,
or for War.
Yeah,
I don't think it's got very long left at that point.
No. So what we're looking at now because of this are going to be your free and cheap cards that enable dumb things in Modern. So you Chancellor has already saw it spike.
Nice
well
pick.
Before. Yeah, thanks. We should see Simian Spirit Guide go.
Yep.
We might see some of the suspend cards that add fast mana. I don't know if that includes Tantalite or if it will just be Lotus Bloom.
Yeah, I think Bloom's better just because Adnaz. That's what it wants,
Exactly. You don't want that delayed Mox. I think they finally made their terrible Mox, and we have it. And then after that, you might see some of the early protection cards. So, Force of Negation, obviously, that's been going up over the past couple of days. Again, it has something to do with Hogak, because it's the only way to defend yourself against Altar of Dementia on turn 1 or turn 2, really. And then you have after that Surgical Extraction, which is now mandatory because the Star City Envy top 8 again was Phoenix, Dredge, and Karn.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
Real bad.
Yep. Absolutely. And Karn wasn't just cast in Tron. Any deck that could make 7 mana on turns 4 through 6 played Karn. So that was Amulet, that was Tron, that was Valakut. All those decks.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of ripple here. You might see some cards from Storm pick up, things like Monomorphos, because they help you cheat a little bit, or Smooth. We might see some weird combo engine cards like Pyromancer's Ascension go up as well, because if you can get that online early by sculpting your hand, that allows you to win the game. Danny Jessup comboed out with Noxious Revival on camera and Pyromancer's Ascension. It required 2 counters on the Ascension, cast Monomorphos, with the second one on the stack, Noxious Revival, the first one back, and then basically loop that through your deck, and it allows you to cast a lethal amount of lightning bolts and with Phoenix attacks on the back end, or just loop the lightning bolts back on top, whatever you need. So there's going to be some weird spiky stuff between now and Core 2020, and it's a good time to start looking at those 0 alternative cost spells or just cheap interactive and combo cards. That's the way I'm looking at this right now. I don't think we're going to see an uptick in long game cards like Cryptic or Path. No Kolaghan's Command. All these fair cards are just kind of sit by the wayside while people figure out what to do once Horizons is legal.
Yeah, it's funny because we want to make fair decks good again, so we're going to make the London Mulligan happen because that's how that works.
But they gave the fair decks Force of Negation, so now every fair deck has to play blue.
All I wanted was Pernicious Deed. Why, Wizards? Why?
I mean, if you want to cast Deed on 2, I can still Force of Negation.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's this weird, damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. You can't allow Mental Misstep in Modern or Legacy because then every deck plays Mental Misstep, and when Goblins plays Mental Misstep, you have a problem in your format.
Oh yeah. And
now you're forcing a lot of people to play Force of Negation or get comboed out.
Yep.
Because of the power of the format and the London Mulligan rule to sculpt your first few turns.
It is a faster format than Legacy, and that's just a fact. So
Yes.
It's the reality we deal with, and I think, you mentioned the long game cards. I think the only one that may see some traction, if any, and I don't think they will, similar to you, would be Path. And the only reason is because if you're on the play, you can Path their Gristle brand or something. But other than that,
like Hogak, whatever it is,
you're out of luck.
Mm-hmm.
So
no,
we'll see.
It makes sense. Modern is a very glass cannon format, so it is very fast, but you do your fast thing once generally. The problem is when you have a fast deck with resiliency. And that's what Hogak and Altar of Dementia give Dredge. Zombies get Carrion Feeder with Blood Artist and the new Blood Artist. It's I can't remember his name now.
Oh man,
not Yawgmoth.
No, it's the other one.
Yeah, the other. Whatever, it's not
kill me. Yeah, whatever it's called.
Not Gix, not Yawgmoth. I'll look it up before I kill myself. But yeah, so Zombies gets a little bit of love in that regard too, and you just create this another. It is Yawgmoth, Friend Physician.
It is.
Pay 1 life, sack another creature.
Yep.
Yeah. Like Urza, people are worried about. I don't think Urza has a place in this new Modern format. He costs 4. You could be dead on 2.
Yeah, not in Modern. I think it's obviously insane and paradoxical in Vintage.
Oh yeah.
But it's not Modern.
No, but Legacy is a slower format but more resilient overall. So your combo decks, aside from like Sneak and Show, which can go off on turn 1 generally, or turn 2 or 3 deck, and they can go off again and again and again, as long as you aren't playing Goblin Charbelcher X4 with no tendrils in your deck. So that's the difference between Modern and Legacy in terms of speed and resiliency. That's really what it is. And when you have both in Modern, that's when things get, that's a no-moss. That's when they get rid of Birthing Pod and Splinter Twin and Blazing Shoal. And cards like that. I'm kind of interested to see what happens with Teferi Time Raveler with the London Mulligan rule. I know there was a Naya Infect deck a couple of weeks ago that was toying around with it. Counters Company can now splash blue for Teferi Time Raveler, which allows them to play an end-of-turn style game where you can cast Finale of Devastation, or you could already cast Eldamri's Call, anything to just go get exactly the piece you need. And to me, that's a little more interesting than what'll happen with the combo engine pieces, and that creates a little more interesting format because you have these toolbox decks that just kind of move along. But now both of those decks are kind of forced to play Grafdigger's Cage and or
Yeah.
Rest in Peace and or Surgical Extraction, and you go into this weird version of the format where now everybody has to have a 0 or 1 CMC answer to the graveyard at instant speed, or to be like, no pun intended, just surgical with your removal and get the exact thing you need right
Nice.
then,
Yeah.
or just 187 the graveyard and have the turn 0 ley line, the turn 1 Cage, turn 2 Rip, or Yixthala Jailer.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be counterplay to the graveyard or in the early turns, and that could be a place you want to go if you want to look at what happens financially from the London Mulligan, is trying to figure out how to stop that. But, good luck on that one. I think the play is to look into combo pieces, really. Just find anything that's underpriced. We found Altar of Dementia last week, so Canister went live on whatever time zone he was in. The Hogak tech that he was playing that night was spoiled early, so Hogak just disappeared that night. It had been ticking up and up and up from like $1.50, but then just disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
But like, we were able to get in on Altar of Dementia the next morning. Nobody was buying it. It's in is it Tempest? It's the original printing. Then
Tempest for original.
Conspiracy 1,
and then Horizons.
and then Modern Horizons. And Conspiracy and Modern Horizons and Tempest all have the same art, but Conspiracy and Modern Horizons have the same border and the little foil doodad. But for like $1 and change on a card whose Conspiracy counterpart is already buy listing for that, it seemed like an easy win, as this deck kind of takes over for at least the next month, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's, it may very well be a flash in the pan, sure. It doesn't matter. It's still, similar to when Bridgevine hit at the Pro Tour.
Yep.
The Discord for the Cabal, I remember the day before the Pro Tour, I put up, hey guys, Bridgevine is the deck, and we went in on it because someone that was there told me, hey, everyone's on this weird, like, Bridgevine list.
Yep.
And for 2-3 months, Vengevines were buy listing for $40. And that's all it takes, is just for this deck to last for a month or two, and all of a sudden, the next deck that does this is your opportunity to get your money back.
Yep. I doubt there'll be an emergency banning in the next month on anything in this deck. They're just going to let it ride because there's no large event coming up. We just have a ban and restricted on July 8th, I believe, is the official date. And that's the core 2020 BNR, and then a couple of weeks later is, I believe, another standard PT.
Yep.
So they might cut some things loose in Modern that they've been waiting on for a while, since they have over a month of data.
Winter Twin.
That's not what I meant by cut loose. I meant cut loose and cast out of the format.
Yeah.
They're twins.
The political prisoner, that's what it is.
It's never coming
needs
back.
to be released.
Look, if they give you Twin, they can give me Pod.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a fair and balanced card in this metagame. I'll never play it. I'll be dead before I can cast it.
Yeah.
How fair is that?
Yeah.
So, the London Mulligan's the London Mulligan's going to be interesting. It's going to take a keen eye to really figure out how to capitalize and maximize on this. But if you're watching Goldfish for the 5-0 Moto lists that aren't just the Hodak decks, to see what's fighting Hodak, you can try and move in on there and then watch for additional combo, because like I said, to me that's where this is going to be. Just something that works like Hodak. To me, this is all about combo and being faster or as fast as those decks, while trying to either turtle up a little bit or put some speed bumps out there. I don't think we'll really see Tron, Scapeshift, or Amulet really compete in this format where you have to be worried about getting milled out.
No, I don't think so either.
They can put infinite power on the board on turn 3. I know that's kind of like the God draw scenario, but that's ridiculous. And
it happens at a rate similar to what Neoform was, when it was like, 17% turn 1? Like, it's still ridiculous. So, it happens enough that it's going to be relevant.
The only thing is with Neoform, 17% to cast Neoform is correct. What happens after that, though, is not 100% chance to win.
Yeah.
I have failed at least twice on turn 1 because the deck only runs 2 Autochron Worms, or however you pronounce that.
Yeah.
It only runs 2 of those, but then you have 3 other Allosaurus riders and some number of Chancellors left, usually 3. And you can get there, but you're reliant on now 4 Nourishing Shoals. So if your plan is to just go all in, sometimes you can lose because you can only draw 14 cards that first turn. So yeah. It's not like your percentage chance increases a whole hell of a lot on turn 2, but if you're dropping Gristlebrand in on turn 1, usually you can attack with it on turn 2 for 8, so you can draw 21 cards that turn, and that is where that percentage ticks up. So that deck at least has kind of 2 split percentages. Percent to cast a Neoform successfully on turn 1, and then ability to win on turn 1, and those are 2 disparate numbers. This Hogak deck, when it does its thing, that
consistent.
Yeah, that turn 1 number is almost a guaranteed win, because you basically just toss your deck into your graveyard, trigger Bridge nigh infinitely, create so much power, and then sack it all to Altar of Dementia. Like, that's where that is.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it, and this is outside the London Mulligan, just something to myself. The Hardened Scales deck kind of seems like an okay play against it, because you have a lot of little guys that you don't mind sacrificing, and you can put a couple more outs into your deck to sacrifice guys, or maybe even in the Affinity deck you can do the same thing.
Yeah.
And then get their bridges, because the bridge trigger checks twice, once when it goes on the stack and again when it resolves. And if the bridges aren't there, so if you respond to either of the triggers and sacrifice or kill your own creature, you get the bridges, and then that's game.
Yeah.
Essentially. You slow them down enough where now they just have to turn Hogak and whatever motley crew they have sideways.
Yeah.
And that's kind
they're
of
a lot slower with that.
Exactly, and that's why I think Surgical in the main for Bridge is the way to go. You can get Hogak with that, with Surgical, and that's okay too, but they still have bridges. They can still amass an army. That's why you've got to pick and choose your moments with Surgical against even Legacy Dredge, if that's what you're bringing in. Like, you can get the Icarids, and that's probably the best move, but you could also get Bridges, and depending on how their Dredges go, their first few flips, one of those 2 is the correct call right then and there. So,
for sure.
I don't know. All right. As a player, I love the London Mulligan rule. As a speculator, I love it because I made my money on Chancellors. As somebody who wants to kind of like invest in things, quote unquote, this is not a place for me to do that.
Yeah.
If I like
this is a pump and dump change.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think there's anything I would want to move in on for the long term based on the London Mulligan solely.
No.
If I did, it might be like fair and balanced pieces. So we've talked about Tithe Taker earlier on in the cast. I would look at cards that kind of squeeze the game and make people play a prolonged game of Magic. So Thalia, Tithe Taker, the new Mother of Runes in Modern.
Yeah.
And maybe a handful of the human box cards. Like, you have Deputy of Detention, Judith is on the edge. Lavinia, the new one, which I know is a spec, but did show up in the vintage top 8, so like people recognize this card's playable, right? These cards that kind of squeeze the game would be the place where I want to go if I want to be long term. I am on Lavinia pretty deep, but not because of the London Mulligan, but because I believe in the strength of that card. Yeah. So you gotta figure out what you want to do with this rule and figure out how you want to maneuver. But I don't think it's a long-term rule, a long-term hold that you should make because of the London Mulligan rule. That doesn't seem right. I don't like. Why would you couldn't do it for the Vancouver rule? Maybe if you bought foil Delvers and we're hoping.
Maybe.
Although the London Mulligan rule with Delver isn't bad.
No.
You get the second hand, sculpt a little bit.
Yeah, Is It Delver is the new like hot spice in the Delver world, and I think it gets much better. Yeah.
Archmage Charm looked pretty good in the Is It Delver deck in Modern. That was being tested today by Todd Anderson and Ross Merriam. But they handpicked its matchup. So they handpicked Death Shadow.
Yeah, a good matchup already to see how much better it got.
Well, to basically hand Archmage's Charm a shining moment.
Yeah.
That's why they picked that matchup, and that's what they talked about. Like, it's probably not good all over, but it's a modal spell. How good could it be? And how bad is it when it's not good, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Check
Fair.
the floor, check the ceiling. So,
Yeah.
so that's all I want to babble on about for the London Mulligan. I want to move on
It's
to picks.
bad. That's all I want to say.
Oh,
all right,
whatever,
let's do picks.
whatever. All right, so my pick for this week was actually going to be my pick for last week. I got to remember how to spell it. And the reason I didn't pick it last week was because I hadn't seen enough movement on the card to actually make it worthwhile. I thought it was kind of flat. So my pick is Mycosynth Golem. And Mycosynth Golem is, despite what you might think, not an EDH card. It has affinity for artifacts. It's a 4/5 for 11. But artifact creature spells you play have affinity for artifacts. Well, who plays this? Your kitchen table crowd.
Yep.
This is the invisible crowd. Now, the reason I didn't pick it was because, like I said, I thought it looked flat last week, and it was. But what has happened over the past couple of weeks is that the market price has actually begun to exceed the average price.
Yep.
So that means people are selling this in TCG Player for much lower than the majority of the sales that are being made. So every now and again, a low one pops up, and it's just bought immediately. And it's keeping these numbers disparate. Eventually, it's going to catch up. And so right now we see a market price of $17 with an average of $15. This card's going to be $20, $25. I'd actually say probably in the next 2 years, so this is a long-term hold, $30, unless something dumb happens in either the next two sets to come up, 2020 or what Arrowhead, I think is what you called it.
Yeah, Arrowhead is, I think.
Maybe
Miro
could be the Viking Plane, or the Commander set. So unless something bonkers happens there and EDH players buy into this, this is just going to be a super casual card for forever. And there's no good place to reprint this card aside from a Commander deck, and that does not really increase stock that much because this was a 5th Dawn card. So that means we are already looking at a very narrow supply to begin with. Or shallow supply, I should say, not narrow. In Europe, it's only £6. So there's immediately an arbitrage opportunity if you want to spend the money on MKM and bring it over immediately. You can buy list this sucker and make a profit right now. Like, this is just a card that makes sense. It's been a casual favorite forever. I was actually very impressed that it is not really in any decks on EDH Rec. It is in a big ol' 0% of decks on Rec.
Jeez.
So that tells you exactly what you need to know about this card. It is not an EDH card. It is a kitchen table card. And those guys will buy whatever they need whenever they need it within reason.
Fun fact, non-foil 5th Dawn Mycosynth Golem, buy list $11 on Card Kingdom. Foil buy list, $11.20.
So nobody's buying the foil. They're buying... Okay.
They're buying the non-foil, so there you go. Get in on the non-foil, and especially if Card Kingdom's buy list is that close to market and median, this is definitely a card that's going to hit a wave soon, I would think.
Yeah, and if the MTG stock price for the European average is correct, if it's based on MCM, that means you can almost, not quite double up because of the translation, but you can probably make about 40% just moving a bunch of them over to the US.
Yep.
Or sit on them, because like I said, this is going to be a longer-term hold.
Yeah.
I'd venture a guess at in about 2 years. My call on Paradox Engine was longer term. I expected 5 by the time it hit 50. It is on its way there now. That's like a 2-year difference.
Yeah.
So we never know what happens. Urza is a dumb card. People might start playing this in Urza. Who knows? Get in while you can.
Yeah.
I have one beat to crap copy. That's where I am on this card right now because it was really expensive a long time ago. It was like over 20 for a while. And there were none in my state. None. I bought the only one I could find in the collection. That's actually one of the reasons why I bought that collection, because I wanted that card despite the condition. So,
yeah,
what you got for me?
My pick is a little interesting. It's Shocklands. Specifically, the ones that I think are good right now are like Overgrown Tomb, Blood Crypt, your non-blue shocks. So Watery Grave, Hallowed Fountain's still low, but and Breeding Pool, those are a little bit higher. But Overgrown Tomb, for example. Right now, TCG low is like $5-6.
Mhm.
Well, in 4 months, we are losing 10 check lands, the full cycle. So all of a sudden, our completely perfect mana base gets significantly worse because we have half as many lands, which means more decks are going to need more copies of these cards. And at that point, you'll see this become the mainstay for mana bases. You don't have check lands. You need to hit all your colors reliably. So unless we get a 10-land cycle between M20 and Arrowhead, this is it.
Yep.
This is your mana base. So right now, they're still at one of the lowest points they have ever been. And I think in a couple of months, once that rotation happens, they're going to go up significantly higher.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The blue ones, again, there's not as much opportunity, but stuff like Blood Crypt, Overgrown Tomb, Stomping Ground, Sacred Foundry, the stuff that's modern playable as well, I think that's where your opportunity is. So you have a window of 4 months from now where they can potentially go up. And worst case, they're shock lands. They're not going down. They'll always be your $5 to $10 to $15 to $20 bills in a trade.
Yeah.
These are in every EDH deck that can run them. They're in every modern deck that can run them. I mean, there's even a legacy deck that runs Watery Grave. So who knows where we could see it at.
I like the price graph on Overgrown Tomb because it's fairly indicative of what we can expect.
Yeah.
So if you pull up Return to Rev Overgrown Tomb, you see that it spikes when it is released, comes in hot at like $18, flattens out to 10, and then slowly tapers off as we find out we're getting shock lands in the new set and is now down to about $7. This card will rebound.
Yeah.
They will all rebound. It happened last time. Overgrown Tomb is a bad example of that rebound because it was highly played in the Abzan Reanimator deck.
Yeah.
A good example of a rebound would be something like Steam Vents. That was not really played in that format.
No.
But it is currently afloat because of Modern, so you can see it hit that trough and then bubble back up because of Modern. And that's what, to your point, that's what we are going to see with these lands that are not highly played in Modern right now. That are just low and slow.
And it's funny because, right out of the gate, Sultai with, Jade Light Rangers and everything was the hot tech.
Yep.
So you saw Overgrown Tomb everywhere at that point. And then it just sort of fell off because we got a million planeswalkers that follow the Wizards' rule of do everything you can to make blue the best color.
Yep.
So
100%.
Overgrown Tomb sort of fell off then.
Yeah. For whatever reason, also, I think people found out that Tybalt was pretty good against decks that gain life.
Yeah.
So that happened real quick around the same time. Now, I think Shock should have a floor when they are outside of Standard, and that floor should be about $10 always.
Yeah.
When they're in Standard, 5 to 7 is a fine floor for that card, but we should always be able to expect cyclically that it will come back up when they rotate.
Yeah, especially if, Wizards or Hasbro's numbers are accurate about how their player base has increased and everything because of these sets recently. Mm-hmm. Eventually, the players that play on Arena, they'll discover EDH, they'll discover Modern, and they'll need the lands for that. Yeah. And they may not have all of the lands they need. So it's just really interesting. Like, these aren't reserve list, but the demand is always going to be there, and the market will never be able to meet it to the point where you're not able to make money on this card, I would think.
No, anytime you can buy these at buy list, you should be able to turn around fairly quickly for a profit. Even if you just sit on them for a little while and flip to another buy list, you should be able to. Yeah, I like the non-essential shocks in Blood Crypt and Overgrown Tomb compared to the others. It's also interesting to think about, so it kind of puts you in a different mindset when you're looking at speccing on cards like this, because not a lot of people like to think cyclically and think, all right, if I buy now, I can sell later guaranteed, and then put these in a box to be opened like a time capsule. On this date, I can start getting rid of these,
12 months, June 11th, 2020, I can pull these out and be like, all right, well, I made my money. Great.
Exactly.
Take them, buy list.
Yeah, and I think it's a good opportunity, and I think it's good to kind of train yourself to kind of think about that, where this isn't a spec you just toss in a box and expect it to come up later, like I'm still hoping with Sunbird's Invocation. This is a card.
One day.
Yeah, this is a card that you can buy in on and expect that at rotation, they will drop. You can move in more, and then months later, maybe 3 to 6, when Modern is kind of coming back up, you can out them for a profit. And it's a good pick for multiple reasons. So I like it.
Thanks.
No problem. But with that, I think this is the end of the cast for this week before I have to stitch this all together.
Yeah, sorry.
It's no problem. So you can find me on Twitter at Halt. I am Reptar. You are
At Thirsty Sizzler.
We are at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Patreon, YouTube, and for now iTunes. Until
Rip.
we figure out what to do there.
Yeah.
Stitcher as well. We're there. We might be on Podbean soon. Might be SoundCloud. We've got to figure out what we're doing now that Apple has announced they're sending iTunes out to pasture next to Internet Explorer.
Done 5 ever. Yeah.
But we are still running our UMA box giveaway. So remember to like, subscribe, and then sign up for our Patreon. Even at our lowest tier will get you an entry into this raffle. And we will do that once we hit 100 followers or subscribers, whatever. Patrons, that's the word.
Patrons, that's the word, yes.
Patrons. So, thanks for listening, guys.
Yep.
We'll see you next
Thanks,
week.
guys. We'll catch you next week.